Hello, welcome back to our channel, and today's video is going to be about foot care in birds of prey, from harrisawks to golden eagles. When you're keeping working birds of prey, foot care really starts with your perch, your perching surface, and for tethered birds, the substrate that the perch is over. So have a look at this. AstroTurf, the correct type of AstroTurf, not the soft fluffy cheap stuff. If you want the correct stuff, the first person that springs to mind is Ian Garland. If you're in the UK, he ships out sheets of AstroTurf in bulk at very, very reasonable prices. But wherever you get it from, just make sure it's the correct stuff. The correct stuff is quite stiff. And the reason is, each of these little stiff bristles creates a pressure point under your bird's foot. But every single time your bird adjusts its grip, those pressure points change to a different part of its foot. If you're using a piece of bare wood or smooth rubber, you are likely over time to get certainly corns under your bird's feet, and worst case scenario, bumblefoot. Now, other than an injury from thorns and things, bumblefoot has pretty much been eradicated in USA, Europe and the UK by using this kind of AstroTurf on the perches for your birds. It relieves those pressure, I can't say, it's so cold. It relieves those pressure sores that form when using a relatively smooth surface. Now, if you're using a ring perch or a bow perch and you strap a piece of AstroTurf over the top of the actual manufacturer's rubber topper, you're going to create your bird massive problems, because this doesn't really work with a ring perch or a bow perch design. When the bird baits off, its leash gets snagged between the bristles and the bird's hung up briefly or for a long time. So bearing in mind, this is a Falconry centre. This is for a specific bird that suffers more with foot problems, and we're always watching it, and it's a bird that hardly ever baits. For you guys and for most people and for most situations here, a ring perch or a bow perch, you're going to use the manufacturer's ribbed and grooved rubber topper. That's fine, no problem at all. But then if it sits out on here all day, when you put your bird away in the evening to an indoor mews area, use a setup if you can that's got AstroTurf, a different design of perch. It doesn't have to be on this stuff all the time, but I can assure you, if it's on plain rubber, plain wood, plain rope, you're increasing your chances of your bird getting foot corns and bumblefoot in the future. So at least 50% of the time, we'll use an AstroTurf topper for the perch. Now, if it is a tethered bird, when it baits, it's going to naturally bait, hold on Zara, it's going to bait onto, let's say, a lawn if the bird's out in the downland weathering lawn, and for most birds it's not going to do any great damage to their talons. But if you've got concrete, I see people on concrete and tiled floors or gravel, as soon as the bird baits away, it rows forward, digs its feet in to push off, and wears away, yuck, the tips of its talons. If that's a display bird or an educational bird, having slightly dull talons makes no difference at all, because you're not expecting the bird to catch its own tea, to catch its own food. But let me assure you, especially if it's you're new to birds and you've maybe got your first harrisawk, if you're hunting hawk, whether it's a tiny bird up to the size of a golden eagle, if its talons are dull and not absolutely needle point sharp, that bird will lose a huge percentage of the quarry it chases. Even a golden eagle, they need razor sharp, pointed needle point tip talons if they're going to be successful hunters. It doesn't matter how strong their grip is. So look at your perching below the your substrate below the perch, and then it's up to you. Everyone's got a different opinion. If you're going to use gravel, use round pea gravel, 10mm. For many birds that works well. If it's a bird that baits a lot, you've really got to think about it. Zeus, my golden eagle, always had dimpled rubber horse matting as his substrate under his indoor mews, and that kept his talons needle point sharp. Here at Icarus Falconry, he's been living here now for a couple of years. At the moment, he's on sand, which is going to be changed as soon as funds allow. what a year it's been last year. He dulls his talons on sand baiting, he'll dull his talons on gravel. We need to change that substrate, because I can tell you now, although his rear hallux talon is like a sickle-shaped dagger, his front talons are slightly dull. It will influence how he catches and holds quarry. So, substrate that a bird is baiting on directly influences, more than anything else, talons, and perch topping really influences the health of your bird's feet themselves. Obviously, if you've got a baity bird and you put it on I see this all the time, on a concrete patio, it's not just going to dull its talons right down to the quicks, it's actually going to make the underneath of its feet sore. Now, if you look at Zara here, the reason we picked her, she's had a few weeks now, actually more than that, in an enclosed aviary. Since bird flu struck, we put her away, we haven't flown her. And have a look at these feet. They're absolutely minging. Although, of course, she's had access to a bath, just feeding on the perches all the time, no one tending to her feet, probably not having that many baths. She's got quite mucky feet. Oftentimes, when you pick up a young, fresh bird from the breeder, its feet can look like this. Because essentially, when those young birds and hawks are ready to leave their parents, that aviary pen is essentially overcrowded, isn't it? It's got a whole clutch of siblings that are the same size as their parents, eating the same and pooing the same, and the parent birds. So you need to get your bird used to having its feet touched, and also let's have a look at cleaning them. And I'll tell you in a second why it's important to keep your hawks, falcons, eagles. When I say hawks in these vlogs, we're using the generic name of a falconer, hawk, to mean a trained birds of prey. We're going to have a look at why it's important to clean those feet. Come on. So, a lot of falconers say, I don't clean my birds' feet. They clean them when they have a bath. This girl's got dirty feet and she's had access to a bath. Some birds bathe and look after their personal hygiene much better than others. And here's why you need to clean your bird's feet. Firstly, any build-up of muck is a breeding ground for bacteria, and occasionally that bacteria can work its way up under the quick. That's not good for your bird's feet. If it's a hunting bird especially, the real reason to have your bird used to its feet being touched and cleaned, and the real reason for cleaning these feet, is because you do not know by looking at this whether your birds took a thorn injury from landing on a blackthorn hedge. You don't know whether it's taken a squirrel bite when it was hunting out of sight and you didn't even know it had grappled with a squirrel. Any damage through the skin, just like you, is allowing bacteria and infection to enter into the flesh. When you clean your bird's feet regularly, and if you get your bird's feet, check the bird every time it's been hunting, and if they're dirty, clean them. You're just like cleaning a car or a motorbike. You're discovering stone chips, you're discovering scratches that you didn't know were there. When you're cleaning the feet, you're examining those feet, and you may reveal puncture wounds, bite wounds, scratches and damage that you can treat. And of course, if you treat them straight away, as soon as you're back from hunting, there's far less chance of them getting infected than if you don't treat them. You never notice until the foot starts to swell. Zara, like many Harris hawks, cannot resist squirrels. They're the last thing you want your Harris hawk to catch. They will bite your bird's feet. Whether it's the first time or the 100th time, they'll put your hawk out of action for the season or forever. Squirrels are not good prey, as much as they love them for your Harris's hawk. So, these are particularly filthy. Normally we just use clean water if we're just going to tidy up clean. We've got a scrubbing brush. A toothbrush works well. As long as it's not too stiff, any brush you can think of will have some effect. We're softening that up. And there's two ways of doing this. There's on the perch, and your bird, if you do this and handle the bird's feet from the very beginning of training, you'll have no problem. Or on the glove. I always find it easier to clean their feet on the glove. My gloves go into the washing machine regularly. They come out and air dry naturally, and they're re-oiled with Neat's Foot oil. I've got no problem with getting this glove wet, because A, it's cleaning the glove, and B, it will go in the washing machine and be cleaned anyway, so it's good for your glove. We're just softening it up for now, and we're just working it around. And of course, if you do this regularly, you haven't got this kind of build-up. It's a 2-minute job. So we'll get them clean first. Just working around, especially underneath where the nail, underneath where the nail enters the talon, sort of the quick underneath. That's a real prime spot for infection to get in. Now, it's quite cold here today, and this bird's a non-native to Britain, and it's not adapted to damp and cold. So do you know what? I'll actually pop her in her box for half an hour or so when we're finished, just to let these properly dry. I'm not going to put her with damp feet onto a freezing cold perch. It's not a great issue. Birds don't have much sort of blood circulation in their feet, and that's why when they do get injured, they take so long to heal up. And you can imagine why. Can you imagine seeing a swan or a duck having a nap on a frozen lake, standing on one foot? Can you imagine if it had lots of circulation in its foot? My goodness, how cold would that feel? So Zara has taken squirrel bites in the past, quite nasty ones on a couple of occasions. This is the trouble, isn't it, with squirrels? You can avoid them, but they turn up in the strangest of places, even if you don't think it's a squirrel-ridden area. You might be wanting to catch pheasants in flight, rabbits or hares, but of course your hawk's going to catch whatever it fancies chasing to a degree. So you can already see, not only is a lot of the muck coming off, you can already see some of it's staying in there, right in those cracks. I've got gnarly eczema-rated hands all the time, and my nails and fingers never look perfectly clean, even when they're clean. It gets in all the grooves. So we want to get under these back talon here, and again this side, just work it under there, right around where the talon enters the toe. It is a real prime spot to build up muck and get infection for sure. But you can see the difference. Now, Zara's really gripping up because you can feel the sensation. But what we'll show you with Zeus is also checking underneath their feet. I'll show you that in a second. So that'll do for a first time out of the aviary. It must really tickle. And as soon as these are dry, let's have a look around there. As soon as these feet are dry, remember I'm not going to put her on a perch, it's a cold day, I'm going to box her up for a little while. As soon as these are dry, what's the next thing we're going to tend to? It's going to be the leather anklets, isn't it? If you oil or grease your leather anklets, we've said this recently, on a weekly basis, good quality leather anklets last for so incredibly long. No, you don't, Zara. If you don't tend to them, they go brittle. They can chafe the bird's legs, the edge of the leather, because it becomes like iron, leather. It's almost like wood, really, leather when it gets stiff. And of course, they then also, because they become brittle and hard, they tear and break easily. Keep the leather supple and well oiled. It lasts a very long time. So this is just done some lure runs on the bull cross lure machine, just to keep that fitness building gradually. Very dirty. Let's get this clean. Who knows, you know, if we were about hunting, he could have got thorns, bites, scratches under there. So tend to keep him on the glove to clean the tops, a bit like Zara. Oh no. Unlike Zara, his feet are cleaned regularly. He's not just come out of an aviary with sort of dirty feet. I'll give him a little scrub up. By the way, thank you, Zeus. By the way, if you haven't tried braided falconry equipment, you're missing out on reliable equipment. If it's well made, quality stuff, you're missing out on much better anti-tangle systems. And if you're not sure how to use it, check out our video sort of over here of how to assemble braided kit. But inline small swivel, braided jesses and a braided extender not only give you really hard wearing, reliable tethering system, they also reduce tangles humongously if used with a smaller quality inline swivel. So I highly recommend those. For people that say my birds chew the braided kit, the answer is take that kit off as soon as it chews a tiny strand, remelt it with a lighter, put it back on. If you let a bird chew its kit and it gets away with it, it becomes a habit. So I want to get underneath, so I'm going to tether the bird. Makes it a lot easier if he's on his perch. To clean underneath those feet. I'm only going to be here 2 minutes. I'm still doing 2 falconers knot slot. I'm only going to be here a second. I'll tell you why. Phone might ring. I might get distracted and forget. I always do at least 2 falconers knots. A block like this one, which is desperately needing care, which was made by a good guy called Phil Lott. Looks terrible. Don't hope he doesn't watch this video. I don't use this block very often, and it needs proper sanding and varnishing. So I need to get under his feet, a little bit under there. And of course, what I'm really doing is checking for any damage under there at all. And again with this one, any corns, any abrasion, this bit here looks a little bit warm, but it's okay, it's just a pad, nothing untoward. If your birds are used to this from the very beginning, you haven't really got too much to worry about, but I'd leave that up to you. Have a look at these, have a look at this one. Look, hold on to this, hold on. So we've got dull talons. Absolutely, even a bird this big, look at this one, it's squared off. These are the only talons on his feet that are absolutely pinprick sharp. These are dull, and they're dull from baiting on an incorrect floor covering for this particular bird. For a, say, for a display bird, no problem. For a hunting hawk to have talons this dull, might look sharp, it's dull. This is the only one that's sort of pricking into my skin like a sharp dagger. World of difference, really important. Sorry boy. And again, having the bird hooded makes a lot of this manhandling and this kind of thing a lot easier, and in many ways less stressful for the bird. By the miracles of technology, we've speeded up the drying process, and now sometimes their feet can be a little bit dry if they've not been looked after, or just in general. So I like to use F10 ointment now and again, a little bit on there. It's antibacterial, it's moisturising the feet, and I say, if you get your birds used to having their feet, when I'm manning a fresh bird, I'm always touching and playing with its feet, telling it that I'm not frightened of its feet and there's no point lashing out at me. Obviously sometimes you have to put up with a bit of pain, but generally at that point in training they're not thinking about fight, they're usually thinking about flight. Even Zeus the golden eagle was the same, as was the bald eagle, although he liked to bite a bit. So we can work that under their feet as well as around the outside, helping to get rid of any bacteria, but also moisturising their feet. Look after your bird's skin. You've seen the adverts. Now, she's wearing a hood. If you've trained your bird of prey well, you'd have incorporated hooding your bird from the very beginning of manning, and it allows you to do things slightly differently and often slightly easier than working with a bird that's actually unhooded. So we moisturise the feet. Now here's the thing, if you're a falconer, you need your bird's talons to be razor sharp. If you manage the bird correctly and well for that individual, those talons will remain extra needle point sharp. Fantastic for hunting. But if they're always sharp like that, generally they're growing longer because they're not getting worn away. And if they're growing longer, there comes a point where when the bird clenches its fist, if you will, the back talon and the front talon dig in to the sides of the opposing toe. So they go to grab prey and they miss, they force the edge of the talon into the edge of one of their toes. If that's a problem and you think your bird's talons are getting longer and longer, and you think, well, what do I do? Because if I trim them back, I now can't go hunting successfully. This is what I do. I leave it until the bird's put away for the summer molt, and then, depending on the size of the bird, I'll use wire cutters or snippers. I'll trim those talons back before the bird enters the molting aviary. If the perching's correct in there, don't worry, they'll be razor sharp again by the time the hunting season rolls around. They're the same as us. If you cut too far back, you're going to cut into the quick. It's going to bleed like mad. Make sure you've got something in your bird first aid kit to staunch that bleeding. It's usually not a problem, but it will drip all day long. Not very nice. A site for infection to enter. So always be very careful. Less is probably definitely more. Thank you, Zara. We're talking just an end piece. I'm not going to snip it because she's going to go hunting and snip through. Just take the edge off, just take the end off, reduce the talon back if they are overgrowing. Rest assured, through the molt, they'll grow back just as sharp. With the beak, of course, we'll cut that down and we'll often use a file to reshape and repoint it. There's no need. Talons will soon naturally grow back pointed and sharp. So, the feet are clean. We put a little bit of F10 ointment on the feet to moisturise them and just help keep them clean and tidy from bacteria. And now we need to tend to this leather wear. And she's been left in an aviary chilling out, so they've gone a little bit dry, which isn't ideal. Let's get a bit of cleaning some of the chick fluff and goodness knows what off that she's got on them. If they're particularly dry, the leather, thank you, Zara, I'd start with neat's foot oil the first couple of times. It soaks in better, helps to soften them, and then use whatever leather dressing grease is your preferred one. This is definitely not my preferred one. It's a great stuff. While I've got a tin of that, during lockdown, it'll be the one that gets used up for sure. So there we are. Feet cleaned, talons checked, perching reviewed, moisturised, leather dressings done, good to go. Check your bird's perching, check the substrate if it's not a free lofted bird, learn how to use the hood correctly. It's an absolute fantastic bit of kit for those birds. Look after your bird's feet, like, subscribe, and we'll see you soon.